Dillian, the body snatcher right here. It's a champ. Big up to Sporting Icon. Subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
So the IBO, IBF and Super WBA heavyweight champion of the world, Anthony Joshua, has says that he is leading the pack of heavyweights, not just domestically but globally. And obviously next weekend he has a unification fight where he puts all his belt on the line against New Zealander's Joseph Parker, who's bringing his WBO heavyweight title to the party. So Anthony Joshua says that I'm leading the pack, and this is what Anthony Joshua had to say. I'm not worrying about who's behind me. I think I'm leading the pack, and that's the way it's going to stay. I'm serious about my business, and they're all welcome. They can all come and watch for sure, and it brings attention to what I'm doing in the UK. If I wasn't leading the way, there would be no eyes on the division. The division was dead, and now we brought it back to life. We're in a position for a reason, and I definitely won't let it slip. Perfection is driving me. I've been boxing now 10 years, so I've learnt my trade and I'm starting to become a lot more confident. I had ability before and now I've got a lot of belief with it, and it's a good mixture. If you've got belief, your body does what the mind tells it. So I had the ability, but I think I just lacked the confidence, and I feel like I'm definitely gaining lots of confidence. I'm able to do a lot more when I step in the ring because I'm not worried about anything. Anthony Joshua's statement. So obviously drop your thoughts below. Do you think that Anthony Joshua is leading the pack, and has he resurrected heavyweight or eyes on heavyweight division? For me, certainly. And I think for a lot of people, like any other fans of any other heavyweight, whether it be Joseph Parker, whether it be Deontay Wilder or whoever, a lot of these people were kind of like gaining momentum because Anthony Joshua was bringing a lot of eyes on. And that's not disrespect to any other heavyweight at all. The division was dead for a long time when the Klitschko brothers were running it. Well, I say dead, it just wasn't as popping. Certainly domestically here in the UK, heavyweight just wasn't really happening. For us in the UK, it started to gain momentum when David Haye moved up from cruiserweight. And from then, a lot of eyes were going back onto the heavyweight scene, if you like. Then, of course, David Haye, he pulled out his toe and all this kind of thing, almost embarrassed us, really, if you like. Well, I say embarrassed us, he embarrassed himself, I suppose. But since then, obviously, David Haye, he's been out with his shoulder injury and everything. He has, of course, since come back and still has a great following, regardless of all that. So, again, I mean, just to touch on that, where a lot of people seem to think that people in the UK, once somebody loses, and that's it. We kind of throw them on a trash heap and whatever. But David Haye has a massive following, and he's had a couple of losses on his record, and last of all against Tony Bellew, which he just shouldn't have lost that damn fight, but he did, and he still has a huge following. And that will be exactly the same way of Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua can afford to take a loss against Joseph Parker. He can afford to take a loss against any other heavyweight, really, and he would still be globally the one where, if you think about heavyweight division, he's the one people think about. And that's not a British thing. This is a global thing. This is a boxing thing, right? Now, it's unusual for him to actually say it because, he's a lot more humble. Now, I've been saying it for a long time. I mean, of course, like my favourite heavyweight is Dillian Whyte, of course. But I can recognise that Anthony Joshua is leading the pack. Tyson Fury done a lot for the division. He beat the man that nobody else could beat. Then obviously one thing led to another. He got stripped of his IBF because he agreed to do a rematch with Vladimir Klitschko, even though he was a mandatory, so really didn't have to. As far as I'm aware, he didn't have to anyway. But he did, and as a result, he got stripped of his IBF, which was the first title that Anthony Joshua got hold of once Glasgow and Charles Martin had the fight for the vacant title. And obviously Anthony Joshua beat Charles Martin for that. And then obviously with Tyson Fury again, due to his mental illnesses and all that kind of thing, he ended up vacating the rest of his belts. So the WBO ended up going to vacant and being put on the line for Andy Ruiz and Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker won that fight, hence the unification now. And the WBA stayed vacant. And then Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko fought for that title when Originally, it was supposed to have been Vladimir Klitschko against Tyson Fury. The rematch didn't happen, so the WBA said, okay, Vladimir Klitschko versus Luis Ortiz, if you like, but they agreed to unification. So anyway, Anthony Joshua has brought life to the heavyweight division. I have to agree with him on this one. As far as the confidence thing goes, you can certainly see he's a lot more confident now than what he was, because when he was first offered the chance to fight Charles Martin, obviously Charles Martin was pimping his belt out, right? And Eddie Hearn Matchroom had faith in Anthony Joshua to do it. Of course, he didn't hesitate, he said yes, but of course he wasn't confident that he was ready to be a world champion. Matchroom, Eddie Hearn wasn't confident that he was ready. People across the world wasn't ready. You know, 16 fights in, or 15 fights at the time, just about to have his first title fight. And yeah, he did it. And while a lot of people felt that he could beat Charles Martin, a lot of people were picking Charles Martin to win because Anthony Joshua just wasn't ready. And it was more of a concern of, well, it's one thing to become a champion, but to stay a champion is another thing, because obviously all the big dogs in the division are going to start coming at you, if you like. And since that moment, he then become the money man, if you like. People were buying his pay-per-views from that moment. Dillian Whyte ultimately made him famous, because that was one hell of a build-up that Dillian Whyte sold that entire event, really. And a lot of eyes, British eyes, certainly were on that fight. So effectively, I don't want to say that Dillian Whyte made him. He didn't make him, of course not. But he certainly helped push him into the limelight, if you like. And obviously since then, Charles Martin, then he defended against unbeaten Dominic Brazil. And then, of course, Eric Molina, when it was originally supposed to have been Klitschko, but Klitschko got injured during training, so couldn't go ahead with that match and agreed to face him after Eric Molina. Ultimately, that's what happened. And it was a Vladimir Klitschko fight that really propelled him worldwide. And since that moment, other people have been getting a lot of attention too. So who else is around? Who else could Anthony Joshua be possibly fighting next? Obviously, people look at the likes of Joseph Parker. People look at the likes of Deontay Wilder, and of course with Tyson Fury potentially coming back at that point, it was still in a situation, would he, won't he? And so of course people are always looking at who's he going to fight. And since then, Deontay Wilder has got a lot of fans, especially in America, whereas before they weren't really bothered by him at all. And since then, they're trying to use Anthony Joshua's name to propel his name, even though they weren't interested in him whatsoever before. Not everybody. There were some people who, of course, knew who Deontay Wilder was and, of course, supported him, being a fellow countryman, a heavyweight and a champion, of course. But it's Anthony Joshua that has brought the attention. If Anthony Joshua had not come along, maybe the heavyweight division would still be in lumber right now, where with the likes of Deontay Wilder still getting pass after pass. And, of course, suddenly with Anthony Joshua stepping up, they're looking at the other champions. Okay, so he's doing it, so what are you doing now? Hence the reason why Luis Ortiz was forced on Deontay Wilder by Showtime. So things like that. And of course Joseph Parker, he gets a belt, and of course he has to do a mandatory straight away. Hughie Fury pulled out of that one through injury and ended up having to fight his sparring partner in Kajanu, which was very disappointing for him, of course, because he wanted a decent name, which was Hughie Fury, but back off the Team Fury's name, to say farewell to the New Zealand fans so he can go fight in UK and America and everything. But ultimately that fight didn't happen. He got through Kajanu in a very ugly fight, if you like, but then of course went on and fought Hughie Fury anyway in Manchester once that got rearranged, ultimately on YouTube. But you know what, Hughie Fury's still a name, and yes, it is because of Tyson Fury why Hughie Fury's got a name. If it wasn't for Tyson Fury, Hughie Fury just wouldn't really be known that well. So anyway, I have to agree with Anthony Joshua. He is spearheading the heavyweight division. He is the one who breathed life back in to the heavyweight division. Not saying that he's the best and he's going to continue to be the best, all that kind of thing. Obviously, there's a lot of people snapping at his heels right now. Joseph Parker could be the one to dethrone him. Deontay Wilder could be the one to dethrone him. But out of the two, I'll probably say there's more chance of Joseph Parker doing it than there is Deontay Wilder. That's being truly honest. Really is. But since then, Deontay Wilder, a lot of fans have just been, they can't stop talking about Anthony Joshua. Why? Because Anthony Joshua owns the soul of Deontay Wilder fans, and he does, because they're jealous that their man isn't doing it, and they're trying to do everything that they can, put down that Anthony Joshua's scared and all this kind of complete garbage. And it really is a rhetoric of garbage. It really is. But they will continue to do it. It's what they do. It's all they know how to do. You know, they don't know how to enjoy boxing. They don't know how to look forward to fights. They just have to pick and moan at everything. That's kind of what they do. I guess it's because heavyweight division has been dull for so long, and now suddenly life is being breathing back into it, and the attention's not on a fellow American heavyweight, and they kind of wish that it was. And the way to do that, if you like, or at least to start doing it, is to take on Anthony Joshua. And I guess that's probably the reason why they're pushing him so hard. But first thing first, he's got to get past Joseph Parker. And as I said, for me, that's a much tougher fight than any Deontay Wilder fight. And even after Joseph Parker, Joshua doesn't have to fight Wilder. It's his choice. He can carry on and do pay-per-view after pay-per-view. Doesn't matter where he goes, where he fights. He can fight Jarrell Miller next. He is WBA and WBO mandatory in Alexander Povetkin, if of course he gets past David Price, which I imagine he will be. But there's plenty of other names domestically. Tyson Fury, of course, that is a much bigger fight than Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker, David Haye, you name it. Tyson Fury is the biggest heavyweight fight in the world, regardless of titles. But I have to agree with him. As I said, like Dillian Whyte for me is my #1 heavyweight. Then of course it's just all the others, and that would include Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, the whole lot of them. Okay, so I do agree. And with success driving him, perfection is driving him. I do apologise. Again, you can see that in his work, that his work is improving all the time. He is improving. Deontay Wilder isn't improving. He's stagnant, and that's a problem. Joseph Parker is improving, of course, and with his recent 2 elbow surgeries that they had while they were negotiating this fight, we should see a more explosive, more fired up Joseph Parker. He's got everything to gain in this fight, if you like. But ultimately, yeah, Anthony Joshua did breathe life into the heavyweight division. And how long will it continue for? I suppose until he kind of decides, really. By that, I don't mean that he decides to win or lose. What I mean is him staying committed will be how long that he maintains to be in the spearhead, if you like. I mean, he could end up beating Joseph Parker and then going to beat Deontay Wilder. But would he lose against Tyson Fury? Would he lose against Dillian Whyte in a rematch? You don't know. You don't know. A lot of us will have opinions, say, no, Anthony Joshua beats everybody. And you know what? You, me, we might be right in that, but ultimately we don't know. At some point he will lose. And as I said before, he's not going to lose that much momentum, really. It's just going to kind of like halt for a little while, and then it will just continue with or without belts. But time will tell, of course, a lot of things. So anyway, drop your thoughts below. Click that thumbs up. Big shout out to ASI Boxing Community. Subscribe. Catch you next video.